Hey everyone, it's Nina. Today I'm going to talk about why I stopped consuming human design content. And while I have not completely stopped, it is like night and day from when I first learned about human design to now. And just like anyone else who really resonates with the system, all they do is just consume as much information as possible because you want to learn about it. You want to learn about yourself. You want to know how it all works. And especially a lot of first lines are out there and they just want to understand everything so they can have that strong foundation. And for the first 3 or so years of me really getting into human design and really getting into my experiment, all I did was listen to audios by Raw and consume as many books and as much content online as I could, following like tons of different human design people that I felt like I resonated with and I was learning from. And over time, it got to the point where I was just like, there's something inside of me like switched. Like there was literally like a flip that switched where I was just like, I'm done consuming content around human design, at least for right now, because it was just like, I needed to go experiment and experience all of this knowledge. And it was like my not self open heart was very much like, well, I need to consume all this information in order to be knowledgeable about this so that I can prove to other people that I know what I'm talking about. And I think with anyone, like, yeah, knowledge is really great, but unless you actually experience and experiment with something to know whether it's truth or how you feel it in your body or how you experience it in your everyday life, you're not really going to embody that knowledge or, you know, what you're actually learning. It's just going to be up in your head and it's going to be head knowledge. So you can sit around and you can say, yeah, this is what Raw said and this is what what happens if you have this channel and this is what it means. Well, to me, that's just knowledge and it's not tested. And so for me, I have found my own natural way of really experimenting with human design. And, you know, everyone has their own different ways, but especially as like a quad right and someone with the 35-36 channel, I need variety. I need to go and try different things. I need to have the experience so that I can actually learn lessons from it. And, you know, everyone's different in the way that they consume information and the way they learn things and the way they embody it. But for me, it's going out and living my life and saying, okay, this is what I read about this channel or this gate or whatever, and how might I see this in my everyday life and how can I play around with this and actually step into this gift that maybe I'd been suppressing, or maybe this is like the shadow aspect. Where am I seeing this in my everyday life? And so it's almost like I take something that I learn and it's in the back of my mind and I'm just seeing the world through that filter so that I can learn from that. And it normally ends up being like an experience completely different than the actual knowledge that I consume, because words carry, you know, a certain frequency and vibration, and coming from someone like Raw, like obviously it's source material and you feel the truth in it, but at the same time, was he a quad right? Was he, you know, was he an emotional authority? Like, no. So he can speak these things and there's definitely truth to it, but he himself did not embody it. And so there are different things that, you know, he can talk about, but he doesn't understand it. And the only way for anyone to truly understand anything is to experience it within their own bodies and within their own lives. And so what I really like about not constantly consuming human design content all the time after 3 years of doing it nonstop is that it's just like, you know what, you could spend your entire life studying this system, but you're never going to have enough time to test and experiment with all of it, because there are literally an infinite amount of ways to experiment and play around with any type of information, not just human design, but the infinite amount of topics and like things to learn in life. And I think that's where some people can get caught up in, is like, am I doing enough? Or I want to learn all these things, I'm going to have all these experiences. And I know that's something that I've personally had to really work on deconditioning around, is like wanting to experience so many things but not really going super deep and really being able to fully explore something, because I'm like, oh, I have this pressure from my open root center that's saying, oh, I want to get this done and I want to get this done and I need to get this done and I need to learn this and I need to prove myself and show people that I actually do know what this is. And it's more of like coming back and saying, okay, like, what feels in alignment for me, where can I tap into my strengths and have my own experiences and be able to share that with others because I actually embody it. And so that's something that I've really had to play around with, to say, okay, like I'm going to be intentional about what I'm giving my attention to, what experience I am entering into, and does this feel right for me, especially as an emotional authority and feeling through things instead of allowing this physical pressure in my body that's like, oh, we need to do this, or the mind is saying I need to go and do this. And so it's allowing me to be like experience life in a much different way. And I'm not saying that those feelings of pressure go away, or I have those thoughts that are like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. It's more of like me noticing them and still feeling this pressure, this physical pressure in my body, but still like just saying, no, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to be much more intentional about what my next decision is and why I'm doing it. And so it's less about having an experience just to have it and only getting almost like a taste of it, which is not necessarily like a bad thing. You know, maybe that's what I need to experience for something. And especially having the 3536 channel, it is very much like a jack of all trades type deal there, where you are meant to kind of like bop around and try different things, but that doesn't mean that you can't go deep into things. And so this is where your authority comes in, obviously, that tells you like, oh, this is where, you know, where the road ends, and this is where we go into an experience because you've waited and this is what I have clarity on. So there are a lot of factors that go into all of this, but I really just wanted to make a quick video on this because I feel like so many people get caught up on like, oh, I studied this and I know this and I know what this means and this circuitry is, and like, you know, that basic knowledge is very, very helpful. But there's also like another step after that. Instead of just having all this knowledge and continuing to study nonstop, it's like, can you take a pause? And for the past year or so, not that I'm not consuming, you know, human design content completely, I've gone another direction of like contemplating gene keys, and that has really taught me to really slow down and to savor what I am taking in, and then give myself that space for that information to integrate. Because what happens is when you consume information, it can almost be like this sponge that like takes in too much liquid and it's like oversaturated. And so it's just kind of like leaking. And to me, that's almost like this huge energy leak, because you can't fully like experience this knowledge and like be able to implement it and integrate it in your life because you're so full all the time. And so you need to give yourself that space for that sponge to start to dry up a little bit, to soak up some of that information before you start consuming more information. So the last thing I'm going to say about this is that another way that I really, really enjoy learning, because I know if people are like, oh, like if you're not really consuming human design content anymore, like how can you actually learn? How can you help other people? For me, I learn best, obviously following my urges after getting clear on my emotional wave. But a lot of times that I learn is I get interested in something, I have an urge to go like initiate the collection of that knowledge, and then I consume it. But there's more of like, I'm going to stop and I'm going to take this information instead of continuing on. And also with my clients, like if there are clients that I take on and I'm like, oh, I'm not really familiar with this channel or this gate, like I will consume and learn information from that perspective. But it's not just, oh, I'm just going online and reading about things. I'm reading about people's actual experiences, because I feel like experiential knowledge is so much more high quality and valuable than just having someone else spit out something like a generator talking about a manifestor, or a manifestor talking about a generator. Not that it's not valuable, it's just that wisdom is not like, that knowledge is not embodied within that person because they are not experiencing it within themselves. And so I tend to gravitate towards people who, you know, say I have a client who's a generator with a specific channel that I don't have, and I tend to go to friends and family members and I observe them, and then I ask them questions about how do you experience this, and then I go online and I find people with those specific traits about their chart, and then I just like consume as much information as possible about it so that I can communicate with the most knowledge, and then just see like how I'm observing other people with those traits and how I experience them as an observer. So then I can share with that person as an observer, this is what I see with people who have this trait. So that's a whole nother aspect of being able to provide value to somebody, because not everyone can fully see themselves. So I think that's all that I have to say. This is going to be a shorter video. I just really wanted to make this because I feel like it's something that came up for me where I was actually being hard on myself about like, oh, I need to go study this about human design, and I have like files and files and files of source material from Raw and like all these PDFs, and I'm just like, I could sit here and read this all day, but it's not relevant to what I need to know right now. And especially as a quad right, I can consume all this information, but as a manifester, when I get the urge to go do something, I'm going to consume the information that I need, because something I've noticed is that I kind of work a little bit backwards. Like I do things that don't make sense and I'm like, why am I consuming this information? And then like a year or months later, I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I did this. And it's almost like I set myself up for success because I was consuming something that didn't necessarily make sense earlier when I was doing or creating something that didn't make sense. And so it's like learning to trust that and to lean into that and know that we're always led to the right things at the right time. And the more that we take our mind out of something and say, it's less about consuming all this information and it's more of like, how can I embody it? It's going to offer that much value to people. And so that is where I am at in my human design experiment. And not to say it's not important to learn about human design and consume content from that perspective, but there's definitely a time and a place of when you kind of set down all of that setting and go experiment and play with your life, whether it's with yourself or you're observing other people and learning from other people's experiences and then learning from your own. So that is all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.